The dark and dirty nature of religious wars, a pretext for plunder and killing. From the blood-soaked Crusades of the Middle Ages to the prolonged conflicts of the 20th century in the Middle East, the world has witnessed numerous wars tinged with the colors of religion. So what is it that has turned humanity's originally beautiful faiths into blood-drenched wars, leaving behind so much devastation and death? From these conflicts, the term religious war has frequently been used to describe struggles and disputes arising from differences between two faiths. And looking back at human history since the formation of societies, it's certain that many conflicts in history also appear to have been driven by a religion or linked to various religions. However, if we examine the original benevolent principles of religions, we will all recognize that religion has never been the primary purpose for wars to occur. Rather, religion has been a tool in warfare, a powerful weapon that drives conflict deep into every corner of ordinary people's lives. So, why can religion become a weapon of war? And is this weapon positive or negative? Let's explore this in today's video. No religion directs humanity toward war. At their inception, all religions teach people to do good and avoid evil. In the New Testament, Jesus said to St. Peter, after he cut off the ear of one of his captors, "Put your sword back into its sheath, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword." Even in prayers like the Lord's Prayer, there is the line, "Forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors." Clearly, God has taught humanity to love even their enemies. Thus, from the Catholic perspective, it's evident that violence begets violence, and war should be the last resort in any conflict. Similarly, in Buddhism, speaking broadly, war is not accepted in any form, regardless of the justification, because war equates to crime. It sows poverty, disease, and hunger for both sides, the aggressors and the victims. There is no Buddhist scripture that praises mutual destruction, whether it's under the guise of aiding the helpless or defending a nation. One story that illustrates the great compassion of the Buddha is the tale of his own clan facing annihilation. Even then, vengeance through killing was not sought. This is recounted through King Gadudava's attack on Kapilavastu to settle a score of humiliation. The Buddha went alone to the border 3 times to dissuade him, but to no avail, and as a result, his entire clan was wiped out. Yet the Buddha did not view this as a grudge to be avenged, because, simply put, if he killed, it would create an endless cycle of karmic consequences. In summary, Buddhism does not advocate killing to seek happiness for oneself, nor for the benefit of a group or nation. Thus, in essence, religion never guides humanity toward war. In terms of benefits, religion gains nothing from participating in war. In fact, war tarnishes its image. But if that's the case, why was the term religious war coined? And if religion isn't the cause of war, what connection does it have to it? To put it precisely, religion is a tool and a motivator that rallies people into war. More simply, it's a spiritual weapon. And this wordum spirit is born from the will of leaders. When considering whether religion is the cause of war, we can answer both yes and no. Yes, because religion is a secondary cause, at least in terms of motivation. It's brought into war by the will of leaders. And no, because religion has never been the root cause of all wars. Most wars in the world stem from conflicts of interest. To prove this, let's look at the 2 world wars of the 20th century. They had nothing to do with religion, but were driven by conflicts of interest and colonial rivalries among great powers. Even the Holocaust by Nazi Germany against the Jews wasn't about religion. Beyond conflicts of interest, the most common thread in wars, both generally and those with religious overtones, is ideological conflict. It's fascism versus capitalism, and socialism in the Second World War, capitalism versus socialism during the Cold War, and further back, Christianity versus Islam in medieval Europe and the Middle East. When one group seeks to impose its ideology on another and meets resistance, conflict arises. When that conflict grows large enough, it leads to war. Thus, we cannot broadly attribute religion as the cause of wars with religious undertones. Ambition for power, dominance, economic gain, and more. These are the simplest yet most truthful descriptions of the reasons behind all wars that have happened, are happening, and will happen in human history. And religion will always play a role as a motivator and spiritual weapon in those wars, as long as there are people who believe in religion and others who demand more than what they already have, exploiting religion for their own gain. To prove this, let's delve into historically labeled religious wars to understand them better, shall we? Almost all conflicts tagged as religious were not driven by the will of the people or the faithful. In reality, the reasons for waging war in the name of religion are far less noble. They share a common thread. They stem from leaders and their interests, with religion merely serving as a weapon to incite and secure gains for those leaders. At their core, these are struggles for power and profit, nothing more. The benefits for religious leaders are reflected in territory, influence over conquered lands, or spoils of war. These gains are amplified when pursued in the name of religion, and achieved through the deaths of thousands, also in the name of religion. Let's take the First Crusade as an example. Historians call it a holy war, a grand religious conflict between Islam and Catholicism over the Holy Land of Jerusalem. However, from the perspective of the religious leader at the time, Pope Urban II, it wasn't truly a religious war. More accurately, it was a war that used religion as a weapon, bringing benefits to himself. At the time, Pope Urban II faced tensions with the German king while trying to unify Catholic churches in Europe. He needed a strategy to consolidate the Roman and Latin churches under his leadership. To achieve this, he had to create a powerful motivator to rally support, and war was the perfect tool. To wage war, he wielded religion as a formidable weapon and driving force. Ultimately, Pope Urban II called for the First Crusade to reclaim Jerusalem, a city revered as holy by Christians, Jews, and Muslims alike. For Judaism, it's where King David established the capital of a united Israel, and where King Solomon built the first temple. For Christianity, it's where Jesus was crucified on the cross at Golgotha. For Muslims, Jerusalem marks a stop in the Prophet Muhammad's mystical night journey according to the Quran. Thus, in the eyes of all three religions, Jerusalem holds equal value as a holy land. Whichever side controlled it would gain near absolute benefits in the hearts of the faithful and their leaders. That's why, when seeking tangible gains, medieval religious leaders often targeted Jerusalem. Pope Urban II was no exception. To garner more support, he declared, "Whoever is willing to sacrifice their life for this great holy war, whether they perish at sea, on the march, or in battle, their sins will be forgiven." Thus, Pope Urban II used religion to fuel war, reaping benefits for himself and his church, backed by princes and nobles. In this way, the cause of the First Crusade wasn't religion, but the interests of the Pope. Similarly, in the Second Crusade, Pope Urban II even assembled an army of Crusader knights alongside a force of peasant crusaders, untrained in combat, to march to war. The truth is, these peasants, accustomed to farming and herding, had no concept of the Holy Land of Jerusalem. They simply took up swords to fight at the Pope's call, promised wealth upon victory. Or in the Third Crusade, when Saladin's empire grew too powerful, the Western Church launched another crusade to oppose his Islamic empire. Clearly, such wars were about defending living space, protecting interests, and vying for power among leaders. There was no goal of upholding or adhering to religious teachings that necessitated fighting. Religion didn't start these wars. Interests and survival did. It only emerged later, when leaders needed to mobilize physical strength, manpower, and the spiritual resolve of armies to fight. Stepping away from the medieval crusades and into the modern era, still in the Middle East, a prime example of a conflict with religious overtones is the Arab-Israeli struggle, two powers representing Islam and Judaism. Clearly, Arabs in general, and Palestinian Arabs in particular, fight for survival and dwindling living space due to the expanding Israeli Jewish community. Meanwhile, Israelis fight to defend their territory, and later to serve their goal of territorial expansion, not for any religious purpose. It's evident that when religion becomes entangled in war, there must be some benefit driving the religious leaders involved. As long as there are leaders who prioritize their own interests over the beauty of religion, willing to wield it as a banner, the transformation of peace-loving faiths into tools and weapons of violence will persist to fuel war. As Christopher Wood, author of Waging War in the Name of the Holy, wrote, "It is the dark side of humanity. They want to kill their fellow humans, and they do so in the name of saints and gods." This powerful weapon of war. So why can religion become a weapon of war? Having explored the two key points of this video, you've likely already begun to answer that question. Religion can become a weapon of war because its influence on human life is immense. If we view religion as politics, then a religion is akin to a political party. The stronger the party, the greater its influence. Alongside strength and influence comes tangible benefits, perhaps supreme power, or the perpetuation of leadership across generations. When the leaders of that party seek even greater gains, they turn their religion into a weapon to drive war. Human greed is like a bottomless bag. Once greed takes hold, people never feel satisfied. And when religious leaders can't get enough, religion fundamentally becomes a weapon of war. Naturally, the motive for using religion in war is often just to propel it forward. The initial cause of war, as mentioned earlier, is far less noble. The driving force here is turning religion into a weapon to legitimize the wars of rulers and leaders. It can push war further, rally more people to the battlefield, and lead to deaths in the name of that religion. Yet beneath it all, the benefits accrue to the leaders. Consider the early days of European colonialism in Asia as an example of this negativity. When East Asian leaders rejected the spread of foreign ideologies, here, Catholicism, Western powers exploited religion to fuel war and colonize these nations. Initially, colonial powers coveted Asian countries for their resources, labor, and consumer markets. Expanding colonies in Asia offered them immense gains, yet they lacked a reason to justify their wars of conquest and colonization of these less developed nations. What better excuse than religion? At the time, European missionaries also sought to bring their faith to Asia. However, there are also examples of religion being used to oppose war and uphold the greatness of compassion. A positive symbol of religion in war can be seen in the real-life unarmed hero Desmond Doss from U.S. military history. He was a soldier who refused to carry a gun or any weapon of harm. Instead, he risked his own life to save others. Though seen as a burden to the army, shunned, and despised, he remained determined to serve as a medic. He vowed never to kill, always carrying a Bible. He saved many lives, and was personally awarded the Medal of Honor by the President. To this day, the emergence of religious organizations for peace and humanitarian groups acting in the name of religion shows that, in war, religion can sometimes be a positive weapon. It's an invisible weapon that strikes at human conscience, compelling people to live nobly, charitably, and virtuously. Thus, from a positive perspective, religion can be a weapon for advocating humanitarianism, proving that guns and ego cannot outweigh compassion. If leaders call for humanity and peace, their followers will act accordingly. The positive aspect of religion here lies in replacing violence with kindness. Through religion, it can be a weapon that targets the greed of leaders. Ultimately, it remains a weapon, but not one for killing. In conclusion, religion can become a weapon of war in both positive and negative ways. Leaders wield these aspects, weighing them to suit their will. Specifically, if the benefits are too great and fuel their greed, they will invoke the divine to entangle religion in war. But if they care little for the gains war offers them, positivity emerges. They won't let religion become a tool, a dangerous weapon, or a means to exploit and sacrifice their followers on the battlefield. Inherently, religion is a beautiful thing. Every religion in the world guides humanity toward beauty. Buddhism directs people to goodness. Catholicism calls its brothers and sisters to live charitably, and Islam, despite its strict laws, guides people toward good according to its principles. Clearly, religion isn't evil, nor are atheists, for that matter. The evil lies in the greed of leaders who impose their will on religion, using benefits to obscure its spirit of kindness, charity, and beauty. Religion becomes a dangerous weapon of war only when its leaders stop at nothing to secure gains, even unjustly, and it ceases to be a dangerous weapon when everyone knows sufficiency and restraint.